$2 million, one bullet, one name. That was the deal. But the moment I locked onto her, everything went wrong. She didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She looked straight at me and reached for something around her neck. That's when my world cracked. Because what I saw was something no target should ever have. Something buried in my past. Something that was supposed to be dead. There's a rule in my world. Never look your target in the eyes. I broke that rule once. And it cost me everything. The wind howled across the rooftop of the obsidian tower, but my pulse didn't move. It was a steady 60 beats per minute. Professional. Elite. I adjusted the dial on the $15,000 thermal scope. The city below was a blurred sea of neon and shadows. Target in sight, I whispered into the comms. Confirm identity, Kaelen, the voice crackled. It was Silas Thorne. Cold. Transactional. The $2 million bounty is only payable upon a confirmed brainstem disconnect. No mess. No witnesses. I centered the crosshairs on the penthouse window across the street. There she was. Liora Vane. The woman the Onyx Directive wanted erased. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like a ghost in a silk dress, standing by the glass, staring into the dark. I squeezed the trigger halfway. My finger felt the cold bite of the steel. I'd done this 100 times. I had no heart, only a contract. Suddenly, Liora turned. She wasn't looking at the city. She was looking directly at my building, directly into my lens. She didn't scream. She reached for her neck and pulled out a gold locket. She opened it and pressed it against the glass. My heart hammered against my ribs, shattering my professional calm. Inside the locket was a photograph of a man and a young girl. I knew that photo. I had the same one buried in a box of memories. That girl was Callista, my sister. The one the Onyx Directive told me died in a house fire 10 years ago. Take the shot, Kaelen. Now. Silas Thorne barked. My vision blurred. If she had that locket, she wasn't just a target. She was a message. I shifted the barrel an inch to the left. The .50 caliber round shattered the reinforced glass 3 feet to her side. Chaos erupted. I saw Liora dive for cover as the penthouse lights went black. Missed? You never miss. Thorne's voice was no longer cold. It was lethal. Stand by, Kaelen Vance. The cleaners are already on the floor. If you won't finish it, they'll finish both of you. I didn't answer. I dropped the rifle and sprinted for the rooftop ledge. My $5 million contract was dead. My life with the Onyx Directive was over. I had 60 seconds to cross the gap and reach her before the professionals arrived to erase us both. I leaped into the void. I crashed through the balcony glass just as the elevator down the hall dinged. The cleaners were here. I grabbed Liora by the waist, my gun leveled at the door. Who gave you that locket? I growled. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, the woman who told me you'd come for me. Callista. In a world where information is the difference between life and death, you can't afford to be left in the dark. Subscribe now to ensure you receive the next briefing as soon as it drops. We're expanding the Devout Mafia tales globally. Drop a comment and let us know which city you're running. The tires of the armored sedan screamed as I pushed the engine to its limit, weaving through the midnight traffic. Beside me, Liora Vane was a silhouette of trembling silk and sharp breathing. Behind us, the headlights of two black SUVs surged through the rain. The Onyx Directive didn't just send cleaners, they sent hunters. Hold on, I gritted out, slamming the gear into place. They're gaining on us, Kaelen, Liora whispered, her eyes fixed on the side mirror. I didn't answer. I reached for my tactical smartphone, mounted to the dash. I needed to trigger the extraction funds. I needed the $5 million I'd bled for over the last decade to buy us a way out of the country. My thumb pressed against the biometric scanner. The screen didn't turn green. Instead, a blood-red notification flashed across the display. Account terminated. Assets seized by the Onyx Directive. The air in the car turned cold. Every cent was gone. My safe houses, my offshore accounts, my identity all erased with a single keystroke from Silas Thorne. Then, a second alert blinked, a global live hit notice. My own face appeared on the dark web's most elite bounty board. The price on my head? $10 million. They burned me, I said, my voice sounding like grinding stone. I'm not the bodyguard anymore, Liora. I'm the prize. They don't want you, Kaelen, she said, finally looking at me. She reached into her dress and pulled out a small, encrypted drive. They want this. It's the ledger Callista died trying to protect. It contains the real names of every board member in the Onyx Directive. It's worth more than your $5 million. It's worth the world. I looked at the drive, then back at the road. The hunters were closing in. A bullet shattered my rear window, showering us in glass. If we get caught with that, there won't even be bodies to bury, I growled. I whipped the wheel to the right, diving into a narrow alleyway that led toward the docks. We were broke, hunted, and carrying the death warrant of the world's most powerful organization. I slammed the brakes near a rusted shipping container. I grabbed my bag in Liora's hand, pulling her into the shadows just as the SUVs swerved into the alley. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from a blocked number, Callista's old private code. The safe house is a trap. Do not go to the docks. Silas is already there. I looked at the water, then at the killers stepping out of their vehicles. We were surrounded. Liora, I whispered, drawing my secondary pistol. Do you trust me? I trusted Callista, she replied. And she said you were the only man who could survive the Onyx Directive. The basement was cold, smelling of gun oil and old concrete. I didn't turn on the lights. If you're being hunted by the Onyx Directive, light is just a target. Kaelen, I can't breathe, Liora rasped, leaning against a crate of $10,000 sniper rounds. Breathe later, I snapped, my eyes glued to the thermal feed of the street above. Right now, we disappear. This bunker was my masterpiece, a $1.5 million hole in the ground that didn't exist on any map. But as I watched the monitor, my blood turned to ice. 3 blacked-out vans pulled up in perfect formation. No sirens. No lights. Just 12 men in grade A tactical gear stepping out with suppressed rifles. How? I roared, spinning around. This place is lead-lined. It's a dead zone. I grabbed the high-frequency scanner. I didn't sweep the room, I swept her. When the device touched her collarbone, it didn't just beep, it screamed like a dying bird. Liora, don't move, I commanded, my voice like a serrated blade. I ripped the silk from her shoulder. Beneath the pale skin, a tiny, glowing blue pulse flickered. A subdermal biobeacon. The Onyx Directive hadn't just marked her for death, they'd turned her into a living, breathing GPS. Every heartbeat she took was a ping sent directly to Silas Thorne's satellite. They're inside the shop, I whispered. I could hear the floorboards groaning above us. They aren't here for the ledger anymore, Liora. They're here to harvest the tracker, and they don't need you alive to do it. I grabbed a scalpel from the medic kit. No anesthetic. No time. Kaelen, wait. Bite on this. I shoved a leather strap into her mouth. If you scream, we both die. I sliced. Leora's muffled shriek was drowned out by the thunder of a breach charge hitting the ceiling. Dust rained down like gray snow. I dug the tip of the blade into the muscle, my hands rock steady despite the crashing above. I felt the cold metal of the chip. I flicked it out, the tiny blue light skittering across the floor just as the basement door was kicked off its hinges. The first man through the door took a .45 caliber round to the throat before he could level his rifle. I didn't stop firing. Silas! I yelled through the smoke and muzzle flashes. You want the girl? Come and take her. From the shadows of the hallway, Silas Thorne stepped into view, stepping over the body of his own man. He wasn't wearing gear, he was wearing a $20,000 bespoke suit. He looked at the bloody tracker on the floor, then smiled at me. Kaelen, Silas said, his voice smooth as silk. You always were a sentimental fool. Do you really think Callista sent that text to save you? She sent it to ensure you were both in the same room when the floor gave way. Suddenly, the floor beneath us groaned. A secondary charge. Jump! I screamed, lunging for Leora as the concrete turned into a pit of darkness. We were falling. The floor didn't just break, it vanished. We slammed into a sub-level maintenance tunnel, the air thick with pulverized stone and the scent of high explosives. My vision was a fractured mess of red and black. Leora! I coughed, pushing a jagged slab of concrete off my legs. She was 5 feet away, slumped against a rusted pipe. Her shoulder was soaked in blood from my makeshift surgery, but her eyes were open wide and filled with a cold, terrifying realization. Kaelen, she choked out. The drive, it's not just a ledger. I grabbed her, pulling her into the pitch-black shadows of the tunnel just as Silas Thorne's men began rappelling down the hole we had just made. Their tactical flashlights cut through the dust like searchlights. Shut up and move, I whispered, dragging her deeper into the dark. No, listen to me. She grabbed my tactical vest, forcing me to look at her. The Onyx Directive, they didn't seize your accounts. They didn't burn you because you missed the shot. They burned you because the money in those accounts was never yours. It was hers. I froze. What are you talking about? Callista didn't die 10 years ago, Kaelen. She's the one who built the Onyx Directive. She's the one who signed your contracts. The ghost in the machine isn't an enemy, it's your own blood. She didn't send that text to save us. She sent it to see if you were still elite enough to protect the only thing she actually cares about. Leora jammed the encrypted drive into my hand. This isn't a list of names. It's a key. It unlocks a shadow fund of $500 million. Callista didn't want me dead, she wanted me delivered to her. I'm not her victim, Kaelen. I'm her successor. And you? You were just the delivery man. The sound of combat boots hitting the tunnel floor echoed behind us. Red laser dots began dancing across the damp walls, searching for our hearts. If she's alive, I growled, my grip tightening on my sidearm, then she's the one who put the $10 million bounty on my head. Exactly, Leora whispered. In her world, love is a weakness. Survival is the only proof of worth. You have to choose, Kaelen. Do you deliver me to the monster you call a sister, or do we burn the $500 million and send the Onyx Directive to hell? A flashbang bounced off the wall, detonating 10 feet away. The world turned to white noise. I felt a hand grab my collar, not the rough grip of a soldier, but something familiar. Time to come home, little brother, a woman's voice whispered through the ringing in my ears. I swung my blade into the white void, but it hit nothing but air. When my vision cleared, Liora was gone. The tunnel was empty. The only thing left was the drive in my hand and a single, gold locket lying in the dirt. The darkness of the tunnel felt like a tomb. Liora was gone, and the only thing left in the dirt was that gold locket, mocking me. I didn't have time to bleed or wonder. The Onyx Directive was closing the exits. I moved like a shadow, slipping through the ventilation shafts until I broke out 3 blocks away into a cold, midnight rain. I needed an ally. I needed a ghost. I headed for the only man who knew Callista before she became a monster, my former mentor, Silas Thorne's predecessor. We met at an upscale, private lounge called the Ivory Gate. It was a place for the elite to trade secrets over $5,000 bottles of scotch. My mentor sat in the corner booth, looking every bit the retired general. Kaelen, he smiled, gesturing to a glass of amber liquid. I heard you were dead. The directive has been busy. Callista is alive, I said, ignoring the drink. She's the head of the Onyx Directive. And she took the girl. He didn't look surprised. He took a slow sip of his drink and leaned in. Of course she's alive, Kaelen. Who do you think taught her how to disappear? But you're wrong about one thing. She didn't take Liora Vane to kill her. She took her because Liora is the only person who can authorize the final transfer of that $500 million. I reached for my glass, my throat dry from the adrenaline. But as the rim touched my lips, I noticed something. A faint, oily sheen on the surface of the scotch. My military training screamed. I looked at my mentor's hand, it was trembling. How much? I asked, my voice deathly quiet. He sighed, his face crumbling. They have my family, Kaelen. Silas Thorne offered me $10 million and their lives just to keep you here for 10 minutes. The wine is poisoned. The air vents are already pumping in paralytic gas. I felt my lungs tighten. The Judas kiss wasn't a woman, it was the man who taught me everything I knew. I'm sorry, son, he whispered. Across the lounge, the elevator doors slid open. 6 men in Onyx Directive suits stepped out, their hands inside their jackets. They weren't coming to talk. My vision began to blur. The poison was fast. I grabbed the heavy crystal decanter and smashed it against the table, using the jagged glass as a weapon. 10 minutes? I growled, bracing myself against the booth. I only need 2. As the first assassin leveled his suppressed pistol, I didn't dive for cover. I threw the $5,000 bottle of scotch at the overhead chandelier, and as the glass shattered and the lights went black, I realized my mentor had left one thing on the table, a burner phone with a live GPS coordinate. It was Liora's location. And it was moving toward the one place I vowed never to return to, the family estate where Callista died. The ivory walls of the Vance estate rose out of the fog like a tombstone. This was where the fire had supposedly claimed Callista 10 years ago. Now, it was the heartbeat of the Onyx Directive. I moved through the tall grass, my vision still swimming from the poison. I had injected myself with a stimulant from my tactical kit, it was the only thing keeping my heart beating. I reached the service entrance, neutralized the 2 guards with a blade, and slipped into the grand hall. It was silent. Regal. The smell of expensive jasmine and cold marble filled the air. Kaelen, a voice echoed from the top of the spiral staircase. I looked up. There she stood. Callista. She looked exactly the same, but her eyes were like frozen glass. She wasn't wearing tactical gear or a mask. She was wearing a gown that cost more than my first 3 contracts combined. You look tired, little brother, she said, descending the stairs with terrifying grace. "Where is Liora?" I leveled my pistol at her chest. My hand was shaking. The poison was winning. "Liora is safe. She's upstairs, being prepared for her new life," Callista said, stopping 3 feet from my barrel. She didn't even blink. "You think you're here to save her. But you're really here to confirm what I've always known. Blood is thicker than water, Kaelen. But power is thicker than blood." She reached out and touched the gold locket around my neck. "I didn't recruit Liora because of the ledger," she whispered. "I recruited her because she is the daughter you never knew I had." "My daughter? Your niece? The Onyx Directive isn't a company, Kaelen. It's a legacy. I needed to see if you would kill for her. I needed to see if you would die for her." I felt my heart stop for a literal second. The girl I was supposed to assassinate, the girl I had just performed surgery on in a basement, was my own blood. "You used us," I rasped. "You put a $10 million bounty on my head just to test me?" "I needed to know if you were still elite," she said, her voice turning cold. "The directive cannot be led by the weak. If you had died, you were of no use to us. But you survived. Now, you have a choice. Join us at the table, or watch as I erase the last of our bloodline." Suddenly, the monitors in the room flickered to life. I saw Liora tied to a chair in the attic, but she wasn't alone. Silas Thorne was standing over her, a needle filled with a glowing amber liquid in his hand. "Callista is sentimental," Silas's voice came through the speakers. "She thinks this is a family reunion. I think it's a cleanup. 10 seconds, Kaelen. Drop the gun, or your niece dies before she ever learns your name." I looked at my sister. She looked horrified. For the first time, I realized the ghost in the machine wasn't in total control. Silas Thorne was making his move for the throne. "Choose," Silas commanded. The gun in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Silas Thorne was on the screen, his thumb hovering over a detonator. Liora was strapped to a chair, her eyes screaming through the duct tape. "Drop it, Kaelen," Silas's voice boomed through the manor's speakers. "Or I paint this room with your niece's blood." I looked at Callista. The Queen of the Onyx Directive looked paralyzed. Her own general was staging a coup. "I'm not dropping the gun, Silas," I growled, staring directly into the security camera. "Then she dies." Silas roared. "Wait," I said, my voice dropping to a deathly calm. I pulled back my tactical glove, revealing a digital display synced to my pulse. "Check my biometrics, Silas." "Go ahead." "Check the directive's local server." On the monitor, Silas's face went pale. "What is that?" Callista whispered. "It's a dead man's switch," I rasped. "Connected to my heart. If my pulse hits 0, or if I manually trigger it, it doesn't just kill me. It triggers the $500 million burn protocol on the drive Liora is holding. Every cent of the directive's money won't just vanish, it will be automatically donated to the Interpol task force. You'll be broke, exposed, and hunted by every government on Earth within seconds." The room went silent. The high-stakes chess game just turned into a suicide mission. "You're bluffing," Silas hissed. "Try me," I said, thumbing the safety. "Kill her, and you become the poorest, most wanted man in history. Or, you step away from that chair, and we negotiate." Silas looked at the screen, then at the girl. His greed was fighting his ego. But I could see the sweat on his brow. He didn't just want power, he wanted the money. "Callista," I said, never taking my eyes off the camera. "Your general is a traitor. If you want to keep your empire, you better help me kill him before I decide to stop my own heart. Callista didn't hesitate. She reached into her gown and pulled a subcompact 9mm. Silas, she said, her voice like ice. The contract is void. Suddenly, the lights in the manor cut out. A massive explosion rocked the floor above us. Silas didn't wait, he blew the ceiling. I lunged through the smoke, sprinting up the stairs toward Liora. But when I burst into the attic, the chair was empty. Liora was gone. Silas was gone. The only thing left was my tactical phone, buzzing on the floor. A voice message from a new number. Good try, Kaelen, Liora's voice said, but it wasn't shaking anymore. It was cold. Cold like Callista's. But did you really think I was the one who needed saving? Thanks for the $500 million. The dead man's switch was a great touch. It's a shame it's registered to my heart now, not yours. I looked at my wrist. The display was dead. I looked at the monitor. Liora was standing behind Silas, a knife at his throat, smiling. The darkness of the manor was alive with gunfire and shattering glass. I wasn't just fighting the Onyx Directive, I was fighting a civil war. I kicked open the attic door as red emergency lights flickered on. Silas Thorne was backed against the window, his hand around Liora's throat. In his other hand, a tablet displayed a countdown. One more step and I hit execute. Silas screamed. The $500 million goes to my private account, then I blow this estate to hell. Silas, look at the screen, I said, my voice low. I held up my phone, showing a secondary transfer window. I've split the fund. $100 million is in a ghost account only I can authorize. That account holds the kill codes for the Directive's satellites. Without it, you're just a rich man with a target on his back. Silas froze. Greed was a physical weight in the room. You're offering a buyout? Silas laughed manically. I'm buying her life, I said. Take the $400 million and vanish. Leave the girl, leave the codes, and I let you walk before Callista resets the security. Make it $200 million for the codes, Silas countered. Kaelen, don't. Liora yelled. Done, I said, tapping the screen. The tablet chimed, $200 million transferred. Silas grinned and shoved Liora toward me. I caught her, shielding her as Silas backed onto the balcony. You're a fool, Kaelen, Silas sneered, stepping onto the ledge. Now I have the money and the detonator. He pressed the button. Nothing happened. He mashed it again, terror dawning on his face. The $200 million I sent? I leveled my rifle. It wasn't a bribe. It was a virus load. It just fried every device connected to your biometric signature. Your phone, the detonator, even the tracker in your neck. From the shadows, Callista stepped out, her gown stained with blood. She held a detonator of her own. You sold out the Directive for a paycheck, Silas, she said, her voice a funeral bell. In this family, we liquidate traitors. She pressed the button. The balcony exploded. I didn't watch him fall. I grabbed Liora and ran for the stairs. In the courtyard, she pulled her hand away. The $300 million left in the fund, she whispered. You didn't give that to Callista, did you? I looked at the drive. No. I gave it to you. The courtyard was a landscape of fire and twisted steel. The smoke from the balcony explosion hung heavy in the air, smelling of ozone and expensive betrayal. I stood between the burning manor and the escape gates, my hand still gripping the encrypted drive. Beside me, Liora Vane stared at the device like it was a live grenade.
You gave it to me, she whispered, her voice trembling.
Why?
Because you're the only one who hasn't tried to kill me for it yet, I rasped, my lungs burning from the stimulant.
How touching, a voice sang out from the haze.
Callista emerged from the shadows of the arched entryway. Her gown was torn, her face streaked with soot, but she still walked with the terrifying grace of a sovereign.
She didn't look at the fire. She didn't look at me. She looked at Liora.
The Queen's Gambit, Kaelen, Callista said, stopping 10 feet away. In chess, you sacrifice a piece to gain the board.
You think you've won because you gave her the money? You haven't saved her. You've just turned her into the most hunted woman on the planet.
She held up a small, black remote.
Not a detonator. A transmitter. The Onyx Directive doesn't follow a person, little brother.
It follows the ledger. By giving her that drive, you've initiated the succession protocol. Every sleeper cell from London to Tokyo just received a notification: Liora Vane is the new target.
Unless she enters the override code that only I possess.
I leveled my rifle at her.
Give her the code, Callista. Now.
No, Callista smiled, a cold, empty expression.
She has to earn it. The directive is built on the elimination of weakness.
If she wants to live, she has to remove the only thing tying her to her past.
She has to remove you. Callista tossed a silver-plated pistol at Liora's feet.
The metal clattered against the stone. Kill him, Liora, Callista commanded, her voice turning into a whip. Kill the man who failed to protect your father. Kill the man who thinks love is a strategy.
Do it, and the empire is yours.
Refuse, and the directive will tear you apart before the sun rises.
Liora looked at the gun, then at me.
I could see the calculation in her eyes, the same sharp, Vance family logic that made Callista a monster. Kaelen, she whispered, picking up the weapon.
I'm sorry. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't raise my rifle. I couldn't.
Do what you have to do, I said, my voice steady.
Liora raised the pistol. But she didn't point it at me. She didn't point it at Callista.
She pressed the barrel against the encrypted drive in her other hand.
The money is the anchor, right?
Liora said, her voice suddenly as cold as the Queen's.
Then let's see how the Onyx Directive handles a void. CRRAC.
She pulled the trigger. The drive shattered into 1,000 pieces of silicon and sparks.
Callista's scream of rage was louder than the explosion. You fool!
Callista lunged forward.
You've killed us all.
No, Liora said, stepping back into the shadows as the manor's perimeter alarms began to howl.
I just changed the game.
Now, we aren't fighting for a chair.
We're fighting for our lives. Across the dark lawn, the headlights of 12 tactical vehicles crested the hill.
The directive's main force had arrived.
And they weren't here to negotiate.
The headlights of the Onyx Directive convoy cut through the smoke like the eyes of a starving beast.
12 tactical units, 48 elite operators, were closing in to reclaim a throne that was now a pile of burning ash.
They're here, Callista whispered, her eyes fixed on the shattered drive. For the first time, the Queen of the Directive looked small.
There is no override. No money. Just the slaughter. I grabbed Liora by the arm. Not today.
I didn't head for the gates, I headed for the family mausoleum. The Vance legacy started in the dirt, I growled, kicking open the iron door.
It ends there. Inside, I pulled a hidden lever.
A vertical shaft hissed open, revealing a matte black submersible docked in a private canal.
Go! I shoved Liora toward the ladder.
Kaelen, come with me, she yelled.
I looked back.
The first breach team had entered the courtyard.
Red laser dots painted the stone walls.
Callista stood in the doorway, framed by the fire of her burning empire.
She wasn't running.
She was waiting. "One of us has to stay to seal the vault," I said, my voice reaching a final clarity.
"If they find this tunnel, they'll catch you. I have to blow the entrance." "No. You're the only family I have left."
"Liora Vance," I said, a ghost of a smile touching my lips.
"You're better than the directive. Now, disappear." I slammed the hatch. As the submersible's engines hummed, I watched through the glass as Liora vanished into the dark water. I turned to face the door.
Callista stepped inside, her silver pistol raised. Behind her, a dozen soldiers leveled their rifles. "You always were the sentimental one, Kaelen," she said. "You saved her, but you've ended the line." "I didn't end it, Callista," I said, holding up the real gold locket. I had swapped it for a decoy in the tunnel. Inside was a physical key to a private vault in Zurich.
I gave her the future. You just have the debt. I pressed the manual override on my tactical vest. The C4 charges detonated in a synchronized roar. The ceiling collapsed, burying the Vance legacy under 10 tons of marble. Epilogue, 6 months later. Monte Carlo. A young woman in a linen dress sits at a cafe.
A man in a dark suit drops a newspaper on her table.
The headline, "Onyx Directive declared bankrupt, global arrest warrants issued."
The woman smiles. She opens her locket, revealing a microSD card tucked behind a photo of a man and a young girl. She stands up, adjusts her sunglasses, and walks toward a waiting boat.
The shadow of the Vance family is gone. But the legend of the last shadow is just beginning.
The story doesn't end here, but your anonymity does. If you want to see how the Vance legacy unfolds, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on.
Comment your location below. I want to see how far the Onyx Directive's reach truly goes. Like the video if you're ready for what happens next.